Welcome back to Money Matters. I'm Emily Johnson, and we have been discussing star-studded tips on money management. We just finished discussing LeBron James. His suggestions have been over-the-top successful, so I think we can use those as an example to follow. If you Google money management when it comes to celebrities, you might also see several examples of things that you might not want to follow. So here is one example of that, and this is, I seriously was looking in some way to pay homage to Burt Reynolds, the now late great Burt Reynolds, in doing this, and as I looked more into his financial past, I realized that there is not a whole lot to bring out of this other than some fantastic pictures and a really, really great teaching case, because there is no such thing as a non-teaching case. You can always use it as a bad example. And so as much as Burt Reynolds is dear to our heart, I think that when we look at his financial tips and his financial past, we can see a lot of advice on perhaps things to avoid, and we're going to look at a couple of those, but we're going to look at them in the same light that we were looking at the positive tips and or traits that LeBron James had. So starting out, Burt Reynolds, so he had lots and lots of headaches, and let me count the ways. So we had bad investments, bad advice, didn't read the small print over and over again. If you read several of the articles with his quotes, you'll see he said over and over again, I didn't read the small print. Of course, a lot of it was blaming other people too, but it was also, I didn't read this, I didn't read that. I had no idea that that was in there. So things just sort of kept popping up. He also believed that his income would never stop. And like everybody else, there was a point where it started to dry up. And of course, that happens at just the wrong time. That's the way Murphy's Law works for everybody. He also made a lot of emotional decisions, had a couple of bad marriages, and was definitely into some overindulgence in a lot of ways that caused to a lot of overspending. So I look at this in the same way that we were just looking at the other portfolios or the other pies in the multiple income streams. This is an example of a completely screwball portfolio, which basically involves no oversight. So this is my visual example of what a bad asset allocation would look like. It's impossible to track that. There's just lots of little things going on here. This is segmented and broken, lots of little things. It's impossible to track that. Really, the goal needs to be to simplify to get back to portfolio that looks more like that, portfolio that looks more like that, and then to get here into these more segmented portfolios. So that was definitely, when we look at a lot of Burt Reynolds' unfortunate financial decision making, it created a portfolio that looks like this, and that is not our goal. So what is our key takeaway? For Burt Reynolds, the plan was literally not having a plan. And again, wonderful man, wonderful actor, and when you read a lot of the articles about him that he's quoted in, he lived for the moment. And he didn't regret that. Perhaps he did, when he was not behind a camera, but he did not regret that in writing, and his plan, as he loved to say, was not having a plan. So every decision was made without a guide and without considering any long-term value or impact, and as a result, all of the massive amounts of wealth that he did earn in his career as one of the most successful and famous and popular, I think it said, I want to say he had 50 plus movies that he filmed, was for naught when all was said and done. And it's tragic to see that, but that is the case when you actually don't have a plan. And this was a fantastic quote that he had, I thought. It's a little long, but it says, there isn't anything, no matter how good it is or how good it tastes or how much fun it is, where too much is good for you. It can destroy you, and you have to learn. It's a hard lesson, but you have to learn to back off and do as good as you can in your chosen profession, and don't screw it up. And the best way to screw it up is having too much of a good thing. So when we look back at where we feel like, the best advice he has to give us is really having a plan and not necessarily making emotional decisions, but looking at long-term value, being good at what you do, maximizing that benefit, perhaps having, again, multiple streams of income, as we saw with LeBron James, but having a plan and using that as your guide so that you can maximize that wonderful profession and that wonderful income that you're so gifted to generate. So what's our final takeaway from both LeBron and from Burt today? Number one is be circumspect. Take a step back. Force yourself to take a step back. Have a friend that makes you take a step back. Put an app on your phone that makes you take a step back. Whatever it is that's going to cause you to say, wait a second, before I go ahead and spend $2,000 on those 4 pairs of shoes because I know that they're going to go great with the outfit that I just got, or before I decide to take X, Y, and Z trip, or before I decide to not show up for my job one morning. Be circumspect. Take a step back and decide whether or not that action is going to be in line with your long-term plan. Give yourself a chance to actually craft a plan. If you keep making emotional decisions and just diving in and don't take a step back, you're never going to have a chance to make a plan. You're not going to give yourself that chance. So give yourself the chance, respect yourself enough to take that step back and create a plan for yourself and for your family, and have that plan defined by values. And if your value truly is in pomp and circumstance, fine. Make sure that that's the plan that you have in place, that that's what you're trying to support so that you can actually reach that goal. There's nothing, everybody has different goals. The way that you view money is personal. It's completely up to you. So whatever that goal is, whatever those goals are, have a plan that supports it and shows you how you're actually going to get there so that you can create a roadmap for yourself. So again, make decisions using that plan as a guide, and be prepared to pivot. Life is going to throw you curveballs. Obviously for LeBron James, it's thrown him a lot of very positive curveballs. He's a young man. Who knows what's going to come next? And I'm sure if you were to ask him about some of the pivots that he didn't plan on making, he would have a laundry list of those as well, as does everyone, star-studded or not. Burt Reynolds, I'm sure, would say the same thing. So be prepared to pivot, because life will come at you, and having a plan gives you the best way to pivot. By having a plan that's value-oriented, you can then take it and swivel whenever you need to. A plan gives you flexibility if it's done correctly. It gives you some vision. It helps you to be more circumspect, and again, it's values-based. And then lastly, and this is getting back really to LeBron, pass this knowledge on. Good, bad, or ugly, we've looked at, obviously we've looked at sort of a Jekyll and Hyde when it comes to money management today. Pass those lessons on. Whether people listen to your advice or not, somebody is actually going to be out there listening, whether it's the person that you're telling. Those lessons, whether it's even just they're watching your life lessons, are going to be passed on. Pass that education on, first within your family, within the community, educating others, whether it's in personal finance or just in goal setting. Any type of goal setting is fantastic. I see that in First Tee, actually. They don't necessarily talk about finances. They talk about goal setting that can be applied to every aspect of your life. It's absolutely fantastic. So a wonderful way to give back through education of others. And then lastly, in charitable pursuits. And that's one thing that LeBron does in spades. Right now, he pays for education. He also pays for bicycles and things that he really values, that he has seen expand his life and his horizons. So he chooses to pass that on. So keep in mind, these are some fantastic last few photos here. Keep in mind that we all make an impact. Star-studded or not, we all make an impact, and we all have valuable lessons to pass along. So make sure that you pass yours along as well. This has been Money Matters for this week. Please check us out on Facebook, Instagram. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Have a wonderful one.